As Representative Moe was bringing up the cost of a book like this, I know that there's a lot more into it in terms of research and various costs, different handling costs or whatever. But I'm also an author. I have a book coming out at the end of this month that's got more pages than this book, and it's going to cost $16. That's not advertising for me, I'm just bringing that up.
Where they can buy it.
No.
As you know, students today are faced with a great deal of burden with the rising costs of tuition, fees, and more importantly, the textbooks and course materials. This bill is a comprehensive piece with minimal fiscal implications that encompasses many components and are needed for a major reform and a positive step in the direction of reducing the cost of education here in Minnesota. As already has been stated, several states have already introduced legislation, and several more are currently working on textbook legislation. A variety of approaches are being taken to address the cost of textbooks and the long-term effects on students. What other industry sells products without disclosing the price to their customers prior to making the sale? Not very many of them. When students were here at the Capitol earlier this year, they testified in front of both the Senate and the House Higher Education Committees about the concerns and hardships when it came to purchasing their textbooks and not having the financial aid to pay for them. There's also been discussion within the committees related to the cost of textbooks and how that relates to financial aid. This bill would also require the Minnesota Office of Higher Education to prepare a report for the legislature on how the inclusion of textbooks into the calculations for financial aid awards would affect students, institutions, and the state of Minnesota. In addition, institutions are required to provide some type of financial aid or credit for students who are currently waiting 10 to 14 days into the semester before their financial aid is dispersed. Publishers will come forth and say that the average cost of textbooks is going to be between $50 and $60. I've got a couple more examples here that I'd like to share with you to contradict what the publishers have to say. The first example that I have here is a bundled package required for an introduction to chemistry course. These materials cost $132.75. This bundled package consists of 5 different course materials, including 1 textbook, 2 workbooks, 1 for use in the chemistry lab, and 1 to be used in class. The bundled package also includes some supplemental course materials offered in digital form. There have been 4 revisions to this textbook in the last 10 years. Yeah, 4 revisions in the last 10 years. The second example is the last example is a bundle package using Spanish as a second language course. This required package consists of a textbook and many audio and interactive materials costing $193. These are well above the $50 to $60 range that publishers are saying are going to be the most common prices that students are paying. The final component of this legislation would authorize the 2 textbook pilot rental programs, which has already been talked about, one for MSCSA and one for the University of Minnesota, with a one-time appropriation from the state for the start of the costs. As an initial investment by the state, that would allow MSCSA and the U of M to reallocate some of the revenue generated from the rental and administrative fees to create more programs within the system. Some publishers have referred to us as radical student activists. The publishers are correct in referring to us as students, but more importantly, we're outraged citizens taking action and standing our ground to force publishers to disclose the information up front to faculty members on how their final decisions will affect students. We're here today to bring this issue to the citizens of Minnesota, as the public should also be outraged with the way this current system is contributing to the rising cost of higher education here in Minnesota. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. Basically, I would say, based on just the information that I know about the law, is that the law itself requires publishers to disclose this information. And if they don't, then I believe it would be up to the judicial system to decide whether it was a violation of the law. And we're currently working on refining some of the language in there to make it a little bit more clear and relate it a little bit more to the law.
We are working with our legal counsel to answer a few of the more difficult questions. What will the punitive portion of this be? Will, if any? Mr. Escott's a great question, and when we have the bill in committee, we plan to have the information as to how we can actually enforce this. I think first and foremost for us, we're getting the discussion started. University faculty and universities, we can police this ourselves, and we have a moral imperative, I think, we haven't been required to. And frankly, we haven't had the publishers to the table to actually be willing to do this. So you're right. You know, we have a little bit of a challenge to actually come up with a legitimate hammer. You know, we want to work with publishers. We would just as soon have them be part of the solution. But right now, in the version of the bill we're still working on, we haven't come up with, you know, what's the hammer, what's the punitive portion. We'll need something. You're very right. We haven't introduced it yet in the House, or we just introduced it in the House, and we will have a delete all amendment in the House that will answer that question. And without it, well, you know, your question too is, what's the likelihood of passing? Without teeth, you know, the publishers might be more receptive, but that's not going to do us any good. I mean, we need to actually make this enforceable and have a means to enforce it.
Yes, last evening, Senate File 1314. Yeah, a couple of issues were raised, and the committee asked that additional details be discussed, some definitions. I would characterize the hearing note as very persuasive on the need to get a handle on disclosures and to address the high costs of textbooks. And the foundation was laid in the 2006 report. I'll note as well there's bipartisan authorship from the committee on the bill, and so a major change like this is going to have some issues that are being considered right now. We'll be working with our legal counsel and hope to have something ready before it hits the floor.
Within the next couple of weeks, we haven't scheduled the hearing yet. It's been introduced. We need to work out some of the details here that you've asked about already. As soon as we have a good working version based on the experience in the Senate and our work with our legal counsel, we'll ask for a hearing in the House Higher Education Committee. And I know our chair is very supportive of this. He's expressed concern about textbook prices repeatedly in committee. So I have no doubt we'll get a hearing. Sure, yeah. Thank you.
Oh.